SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Welcome to today's episode of iGaming Daily, sponsored by Optimove, #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. I'm Ted Orme-Clay from SBC News, and I'm joined by my colleague Viktor, our senior journalist, and Ted Menmuir, SBC Media's editor-at-large. We are going to discuss a range of geographies, I guess, in today's podcast. So firstly, Viktor has not long got back to the UK from a trip to the Netherlands, where he was attending the Gaming in Holland conference, which came at a very interesting time given some pretty big political developments in that country, which coincided with that event. And then later on, we'll be talking to Ted Menmuir about developments in Poland, where similarly an election is ushering in a new government and potentially a new era for the country's gambling industry. So, to kick us off with the first part of this podcast, Viktor, welcome back to sunny Manchester. How was tell us about your trip to Amsterdam last week? How was it?
Well, it was good. Just to make you feel better, the weather wasn't much different from what it is now in the UK, cloudy. But since it was my first time in Amsterdam, and I can say for certain that it's a city with a lot of character, with a lot of charisma. A lot of color as well. So, I will definitely be going back in the future, not for work, but for a proper holiday.
Yeah, it's a city that it's one of Europe's great capitals, isn't it? And it's one that I've never had the opportunity to visit either. It's one I'd quite like to tick off the list. But obviously, as you said, you were there for professional purposes.
Yes.
So your trip also coincided with quite a big political development in the Netherlands, as I said in our introduction. Could you tell our listeners a bit about this? What exactly went down in the Netherlands last week?
I'm not sure if I should say it was a expected or an unexpected development. What happened is on Tuesday, I think it was Monday evening, Tuesday morning, the coalition government, the four-party coalition government, fell apart. And this was caused by the biggest party in that coalition, PVV, of politician Geert Wilders. And I'm not sure if it was expected or unexpected, because tensions have been brewing in this coalition since it first took power a little over a year ago, mainly due to PVV's and anti-immigration policies. So last week, that party PVV stepped down and withdrew its support for the coalition, which automatically meant that Prime Minister Dick Schoof has not enough politicians to continue with the current government. So a new election is coming in October, and currently there's a caretaker government in the Netherlands.
Yeah, so this is something that while you were in Amsterdam, me and Ted and I should say, I'll use proper English. Ted and I spoke about this a bit in depth on a podcast on Thursday. Obviously, like you say, there's been quite a fragile alliance, I think, between four different parties in the Netherlands for about a year. And yes, I guess to a lot of people, this might not be too surprising that eventually some tensions between these different groups would come to the forefront. This has obviously occurred during a regulatory review of the Dutch gambling market. So I'd assume that this was quite a big talking point at Gaming in Holland last week, right? Like, was the election fallout quite a big topic of conversation for a lot of stakeholders from what you saw?
You would assume so, but surprisingly, even for me, the political fallout wasn't the main talking point at the conference. There were no evidence of course, there was uncertainty among those present, because currently, obviously, of the political situation, there's no government, but there was also no worries expressed during the conference about the current political situation. If anything, there was actually some positive sentiments. The Dutch industry seemed like it was ready to come together, to mobilize itself and turn what is essentially a political crisis into an opportunity to devise a plan and get the most out of the next cabinet, whichever it might be. So, yeah, surprisingly enough, the Dutch industry seemed cool and collected in my eyes.
That's interesting. So it almost seemed like a lot of people, stakeholders in the Dutch industry kind of view this as maybe a chance for them to start again with a clean slate, with a new government that might have a new approach to the industry.
Exactly, and of course it matters which party comes in power, because every party is different. For example, if PVV at the time of the Dutch government fallout was the biggest party coalition, the biggest coalition party in the four-party coalition. So. It's a nationalist party. It's a right-wing party. So if they come to power again, we can expect very populist semantics from them, which will also include most certainly it will include anti-gambling messages. So it really matters which party will be elected in the October election. But like I said, the Dutch industry seems cool and collected and ready to take action and devise an action plan within the next sort of 6 months. They have plenty of time to work together to make sure that they come on top from out of this situation.
So aside from the politics, which, as you said, wasn't actually a huge concern for a lot of stakeholders, what was high on the agenda for Gaming in Holland attendees and speakers?
The black market. The black market was the number one priority from what I've heard. We had speakers from the Dutch State Lottery, from the gambling regulator, KSA, from H2 Gambling Capital, which presented some numbers on the Dutch market, as well from a presence from the Dutch Association of Licensed iGaming Operators, VNLOK. And the main talking point across all these different stakeholders, regulators, etc., was that the black market is very prevalent in the Netherlands, and perhaps if we're going to talk about the potential effects of the political fallout in the Netherlands, the biggest danger from that is that the black market is that the government has fallen apart in a time when the black market is gaining significant ground among Dutch consumers.
So just to summarize things for us, Viktor, what would you say were the main sort of hopes of attendees when it comes to the future of the Dutch gaming industry, and I guess particularly how they want to interact with authorities and regulators moving forward?
Like I said, the main talking point was the first and foremost talking point was the black market. So the industry will come together to work on an action plan that will include easy to understand language for the future policymakers and make the black market the number one pressing issue that the industry and policymakers need to address. The second big takeaway was that these stakeholders will try to delay the upcoming tax increase in 2026. As we know, the former Prime Minister Dick Schoof accepted the Dutch budget, which included a gambling tax increase to 37.5% from January 2026. And obviously the sector was not very happy about that. So they were quite outspoken that in their efforts in the coming months, they will try to postpone that tax increase for at least a few years if possible. And problem gambling was also a big concern. Obviously, it's a given, having the black market that prevalent. The one interesting takeaway is that the regulator will have will open an independent problem gambling currently, let me start over again. Currently, the regulator has a gambling harm program in place, and going forward, they will make this program into an individual department to better address the gambling harm rates in the country. And also, the regulator is working closely with the Dutch Lottery to devise a new methodology under which to calculate channelization rates in the market, because the Dutch State Lottery said that current calculations are not very accurate, and we can expect this new methodology to be published later this year, October, September, in the KSA's market analysis report.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Viktor. That was a very thorough breakdown for us and our listeners. You can already read some of Viktor's coverage of what's been going on in the Netherlands on the SBC News website, and we'll chuck some links into the description below. And we'll have some more coverage of the Gaming in Holland event coming up for you soon. I guess I should also, on the topic of events, take the time to promote the SBC Summit Malta, which is, of course, taking place this week on Wednesday and Thursday, which both Ted, Menmuir and myself will be attending. We're just going to take a quick ad break, and then we'll be back to talk with Ted about Poland.
Join us for SBC Summit Malta from the 10th to the 12th of June. With over 75 exhibitors and more than 250 expert speakers, our expanded agenda covers all aspects of the European gaming industry. Get your tickets now at sbcevents.com.
Welcome back to today's episode of iGaming Daily. We've just had a very good discussion with Viktor about things going on in the Netherlands, quite a lot of big political developments there and how that can impact the industry. And now we're going to head to Poland, where there's also been some very similar goings on. So, Ted, thanks for taking the time to speak to me today. To start things off, how big is the gaming industry in Poland, and why should international stakeholders be paying close attention to developments that affect it?
Good question. And I'm going to reply as a publisher and a news site, we've actually spent a bit of kind of resources going into Poland, and there's a lot of factors why. Poland is a young economy, and it's Europe, without a doubt, Europe's fastest growing economy, and it's kind of mobilizing between its tech industry, it's in the kind of right geographical region for Europe, and it's a country that, compared to Western European counterparts, is growing at a double-digit rate on GDP, which is, for Europe at the moment, is very, very promising. However, its politics is very divided, and last week it elected Karol Nawrocki from the Justice Party as its new president. Now, the Justice Party, yes, they are very conservative, but they're not and they do carry populist sentiments. However, they are not anti-Western. They are very kind of formulated in kind of being part of Europe and to implement kind of European practices in Poland, right? But they are kind of divided in kind of social issues regarding the European Union. Thus, they kind of viewed, they're quite a divisive party. We're looking at Poland and we're thinking that it is definitely going to be one of Europe's more important markets in the future. And we are kind of trying to get kind of more on the ground reporting, especially with Justyna Krajewska Gilbert as our correspondent there.
So you just mentioned Poland's new president, obviously, Ted, and sort of our on the ground presence there, who've given us some good coverage of this. Just to our listeners who might have had a chance to read our coverage on the site so far, what do we know about Poland's new leader, incoming leader, and what might his approach to gambling be, shaped by these, as you said, the very sort of unique values of the Justice Party?
Okay, so it's very much, as expected with the Justice Party, it's very much what it says on the tin. They are pro kind of centralized controls. I don't think it's going to change there. But however, we know regardless of whether the government is conservative or liberal, in the coming months, it has, especially as Poland, it views to kind of restructure kind of Poland's economic overview. In terms of gambling, it has to answer kind of some severe kind of structural issues as to how Polish gambling is governed, especially in terms of its criminal code, in which actually there's an impunity towards illegal gambling, but the people who are being penalized are the consumers themselves if they play in illicit websites. So they can't go to the police, they can't go to the authorities to claim against or to sanction illegal websites. And then the other thing is that Polish taxes are not working in terms of the sports betting revenues. Everyone's kind of reporting back on losses. They've applied a 12% tax on net revenue since 2017, which saw so many operators depart from the remote gambling regime. And the reality is that the majority of operators are just claiming back year-on-year loss.
So basically, there's a lot of legacy issues for this new government to address regarding the gambling sector. Is that a fair summary of this?
Yes, and there's a lot of kind of crossroads as does it, double down on a more centralized control of gambling? Does it liberalize the market? But also there are kind of fundamental questions of how it kind of governs kind of the state monopoly. So an example of this is that so many of the black market issues come from the reality that online casino is restricted to the state-owned company of Totalizer Sportwoty, and it's kind of near kind of total control on slots and table games.
So then, what I guess this is all very up in the air, isn't it? But do you think this government's policies will end up being positive or negative to the industry? Like, is more centralized control over gambling what the Polish industry needs right now, or does it need more liberalization? Obviously, I get that this is a very multi-dynamic problems that they're facing.
Okay, so the feedback we get from Poland is that, very much mixed messaging. And Poland, for example, took the European Council seat this year for 6 months. And it actually was the first government to put illegal gambling at the top of its agenda. But at the same time, the government just refuses to face its kind of structural issues, right? And it's one jurisdiction that is, severely targeted by black market operators just due to these kind of just fractures in its value chain and in its in how it operates. So, Poland is a very, very easy target for black market operators, and especially if you've got a criminal code that penalizes the consumer.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Ted. I don't think I've ever heard of a market that has an online state monopoly and penalizes the customers for playing on the black market when obviously the state monopoly isn't doing enough to attract the customers to it. It's a very...
there are multiple reasons why, Poland was set up in that way, kind of cultural, and then going back from kind of trying to transfer itself over to kind of a more kind of European or EU-based kind of harmonization across its systems. And we always go back to this theme that, it's hard to take up these kind of restrictions. It's not just, you can just implement them in and press play. And I think Poland is part of that. But again, we'll see what kind of the agenda pulls through for the Justice Party. They do kind of they are very digitally attuned. So they, the digital space is a huge economic area for Poland in which they view kind of growth. And let's see what their agenda comes up with.
Thank you, guys. I think we are now all out of time. But thank you both very much for taking the time to speak to me today about these two markets, two very interesting ones moving forward, where I'm sure the political developments and any other news and developments affecting them will be covered quite extensively by us, both on SBC News and on future podcasts. So again, thanks very much for joining me, guys, and we'll speak to you all again very soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.